He is a former Federal Air Marshal and weapons trainer who left in 2006 after 4 years. Why? He says the Air Marshal Service wasn't doing its job. So many marshals were leaving, not being replaced, that fewer flights have an assigned air marshal aboard. Even worse, he says, to fudge the numbers, managers at his L.A. office began assigning agents to short, no-risk flights, Phoenix to San Diego, Los Angeles to Las Vegas, to get as many flights in as possible, no matter how low the risk, so the percentage of flights covered would seem high.
It's not a threat flying on Southwest Airlines to Las Vegas.
The Federal Air Marshal Service tells CNN assignments are intelligence-driven and risk-based. This former air marshal says it was just a numbers game.
We were questioning how these flights could be intelligence-driven when we were flying from, say, San Diego to Phoenix, on another leg an hour later to Las Vegas, back to Phoenix, back to San Diego.
More than a dozen air marshals and pilots have told CNN the same thing, saying the Federal Air Marshal Service is protecting about 1% of the nation's 28,000 daily flights. The Federal Air Marshal Service disputes that figure, and this week in a congressional hearing, the head of the Transportation Security Administration, Kip Howley, told members of Congress what CNN heard from the air marshals is flat out wrong.
On the CNN report about air marshals covering 1%, that number is absolutely wrong by an order of magnitude, and it was a guess by the folks there, and I just have to say that number is completely false.
Howley would not say what percentage of flights have air marshals. That's a national security secret. The Federal Air Marshal Service continues to refuse CNN's request for an interview. Air marshals tell us the agency hides behind national security to keep the public from knowing how thin the coverage really is. Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee this month began holding closed-door meetings with the Air Marshal Service to determine if congressional oversight committees are being flim-flammed.
Air marshals have suggested that not only to you, but they've suggested that to members of Congress, and we are concerned. We, too, are not interested in having funny numbers.
Jackson Lee says she is convinced air travel is safe and terrorists should not have any thoughts of taking over another American aircraft. With few applicants, current air marshals tell us recruiting and training standards are being lowered. In 2006, the Air Marshal Service sent out this memo saying new hires would no longer face mandatory psychological testing unless the recruit admits being treated for a mental condition. And this former weapons instructor with the Air Marshals says when managers and recruits could not pass the tough federal tactical pistol course called the TPC, it was replaced with a shooting test they could pass.
And you're a firearms trainer, and you say they absolutely lowered those standards.
Absolutely.
But TSA says the test was changed 6 years ago because marshals needed police-type training, not military. These current air marshals say it is so bad the Department of Homeland Security is hiring airport screeners to fill the ranks.
TSA internal hires, administrative staff that has no college, no law enforcement, no military background.
Screeners?
Correct.
Screeners are federal air marshals.
Absolutely. To me, it's more of an embarrassment to be a member of that agency that would allow that particular individual to make it through the training program. I know I don't want him on my flight. I don't want him as my partner.
In a written statement, the Air Marshal Service said all of its candidates go through rigorous training and screeners who do qualify can become marshals. As for the change in psychological testing, the TSA says it's no longer necessary since all marshals are carefully interviewed. Drew Griffin, CNN, Atlanta.